we're in a rating system here, and the key factor is sensationalism. You know, they got you running in circles 9 to 5, but from 5 to 9, you're mine. Okay. No System of a Down reference. Nobody got it.
Nobody. No.
Tough crowd, guys. It's a slow week. Okay, it's a slow week. It's the leg kick. We're back. We're back, baby. Trust me, I'm back. And we got news for you. We got a little controversy we're going to stir up. But before all that, remember, like us. You can find us where you find podcasts. Subscribe, like the video, tell your friends about it. And before we start, guys, I've got something kind of serious I wanted to talk about on a bit of a personal note. No, I'm serious, Mike. This comes from the heart. Now, come to my attention that here it goes. You guys have been saying lately that I tend to dictate the conversation and own the conversation a little bit, and I tend to take control of the conversation, and I've really taken that to heart, and I've thought about that criticism, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'm not here to take over. I'm here to take part.
I'd like to apologize to absolutely nobody.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're in the left or you're on the right, okay, or where you are. What matters is that we can all come together in the center and talk, right? Because the Asiffo boys are taking over. It's a leg kick, everybody. Roll the graphic.
Let's go.
For those of you uninitiated, Mike gave a post-fight speech, which will live in infamy. I don't think David's even aware of it, but
I haven't heard it. I was talking to Mike.
Oh yeah, no. Like I think I got a little excited after the fight.
It was great. He'll never live it down. I'm glad he won because I can make fun of him.
Is that our first piece of news?
It was. First piece of news is that Mike's fight speech was, War and Peace long.
Mike wrote a dissertation for his.
I will be evidencing the claim of my victory.
But I'd like to start with, you must make the weights.
Well, guys,
it was a lot of fucking weight, I gotta say.
There's some big fight news to deal with. There's some juicy news. There's some sensuous news. And, there's a couple irrelevant fights that happened over the weekend. Frank Mir suffered an unfortunate loss. But
wait, hold on. Irrelevant. Didn't George Kambosos just upset Teofimo Lopez? Oh,
did he?
MMA.
Yeah, I was referring to MMA and the side shows that surround it. I just want to start off with some big announcements. First off, a man who I think, and I'm calling it, will be champion by the end of 2022. Agbaire Ankalaev taking on Thiago Santos. And no date on that, but it's in the works.
Good fight.
I like that fight. Not for Thiago.
Not for Thiago.
Not for Thiago.
He's been hit and miss.
Thiago is a wild man. He
just hasn't been the same in terms of explosiveness post knee injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he gave a good account of himself against Glover early, but Glover does what he does and hangs on and was able to secure a takedown and just brutalize him from there. But yeah, Ankalaev looking scarier and scarier with every fight, and I'm excited to see this one.
Yeah,
it's going to be him and Yuri fighting for the belt. What's that?
What he did to Volkan in his last time out was,
Yeah, a conservative performance, but, by all accounts, he just shut someone down who was a dangerous contender who was just, not too long ago we were talking about how he was just starching everyone he went up against.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about Calvin Kattar, Giga Chikadze?
Yeah, I heard about this. I'm very excited. Man. Giga is I really like the way Giga fights. I know that there's one of us who doesn't or didn't in the past.
Me.
It was David. David didn't like, right? I love the Giga kick.
In his first 3 fights, I was not wowed with his skill set personally. I thought he had run a point fighting kind of mindset to the UFC, which, I'm not a Just Bleed guy, but I didn't love it.
You want to see some action.
But since then, though,
And to his credit, as a kickboxer coming in from Glory, facing a division with a lot of, people who can throw up a good takedown, it's difficult to kind of find yourself in that atmosphere and kind of establish what's going to be your striking style, how you're going to make it effective and damaging over the long run while dealing with these new threats. But to his credit, it seems like he's done it.
Yeah, he's figured himself out. And also, I should say, it's not like Israel Adesanya just was Israel Adesanya right out of the gate coming from Glory either. He had to figure himself out as to what he was going to be. And he's done that in spades, obviously, being the middleweight champion. So with Giga, I think with Giga, it's just kind of a matter of time. I don't know if I would say he's going to be the featherweight champion because there's a lot of killers at the top. But this is a good way to test himself. This is the can you swim with the big boys fight here. He had a good test. He passed his test with flying colors against Edson Barbosa.
Yes.
And so this is another trial by combat to see if you can reach the upper level. I would have liked to see him versus Zabit in Zabit's return match, but
Yeah, I don't love this fight for Cater, to be honest with you, because he's got a very boxing heavy stance, and he's shown that when you can shut down his jab and knock that lead leg offline, what's his face did? Well, like Michael Asiffo did last weekend, but also Moicano did to him. Yeah, he doesn't fare too well. He can crack, mind you. He can crack. And next up, another intriguing featherweight matchup. Now, this for me will, speaking of Edson Barbosa, for me, dictate what kind of a future he has in this division. Mm-hmm. So Barbosa versus Bryce Mitchell, set for March.
I don't like Bryce Mitchell's chances. I'll be honest.
You know what? I don't like Barbosa's chances because I feel like against grapplers, sometimes he struggles, and Bryce Mitchell has lights out grappling. So, yeah, I don't know.
But the one thing about those other grapplers is they usually have a hellfire takedown game. I've yet to see Bryce Mitchell really go into that.
Hyperbole on these guys. Lights out grappling. Hellfire takedown
Mitchell
game.
is a great
a supersonic meteoric. I'm not arguing the claim. I'm just saying the language is very funny,
Bryce Mitchell, when it gets to the ground, is very interesting. He takes the back really well, is pretty good from the truck. I'm not denying that. He's one of the few guys who's made deep half work for him so far in MMA, and that's very hard to do. But it's getting to the ground that I've noticed. If you're having a tough time taking touchy-feely to the ground, can you take down Edson Barbosa, who has a 78% takedown defense percentage right now?
Yeah, Barbosa's a rough ask for anyone. To be fair, I don't know how disciplined Bryce Mitchell can be in fighting game plan. And as we've seen, if your name's not Giga Chikadze, you're going to have to fight to a disciplined game plan to beat Barbosa. It's just the case. The Giga Barbosa fight looks like the first fight where Barbosa was really having to be the one that was having to adapt to somebody else's style as opposed to the other way around, which impressed me thoroughly. He neutered Barbosa on the feet, right? He took away all of his weapons and was able to just be the one asking the questions. As far as this fight, I really don't know how it's going to go. I suspect Barbosa will win, but if he doesn't, then it is a big step down for him. And he can forget about title contention in the near future, unfortunately.
Yeah. But Bryce Mitchell does it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, finish. Final.
I was going to say, but if Bryce Mitchell does win and pass his test with flying colors, and ladies and gentlemen, there's another tough featherweight that you have to worry about. One that is, I would say, is probably Brian Ortega light in the sense that he doesn't have the boxing, but is definitely more committed to working the ground game. But
definitely doesn't have the ground accolades as far as we know. There's accolades of Ortega, but is more active in pursuing it as opposed to Ortega, who will just for the large part of his career took if it comes, it comes kind of approach. A little bit different in the Volkanovski fight, but I can see where you're coming from. But big news coming across my desk this morning. Middleweight title fight. Robert Whittaker signed two fights. Israel Adesanya, February the 12th. The only fight that makes sense in this division at this present moment.
Yeah.
I mean, not to reiterate old points, but I think that if Whittaker fights a similar game plan but commits himself more to attacking at different levels, he can have more success, as in attacking the trailing leg as he pushes Adesanya backwards. Maybe feinting more and quite simply blitzing less. And, committing to the takedown as well. At the very least, if you don't get success with it, pinning Adesanya up against the cage for a long period of time, I think he has the tools to make it interesting. I really do. I think Adesanya is also not an unsolvable puzzle, as we've seen, if you're willing to fight a rounded MMA game like Blachowicz did, but that was also up a weight class. So I'm really lost for words at what this could look like. I don't think it looks like the first one, though.
Yeah. If I could say so, I know David's gonna want to get a lot in because it's Israel Adesanya, but if I could say, like, Israel Adesanya has shown that he's not like, takedowns are not impervious against them, so you can use your offensive wrestling. He has shown that, like, he does tend to leave his leg in range a little too long when he's doing the lean back and moving out and stuff. Just like great movers have been, like, see your Dominic Cruz, see your Rose Namajunas. Like, that's not just him. And against Calvin Gastelum, he has shown that it's not like he's got this Anderson Silva wizardry like head movement that Silva had in his days. He is hittable. So all of that to say is that Whittaker has the path to victory. He has things he can do to win. And he is one of the few guys fast enough that, like, him and Calvin Gastelum, I think, are two of the fastest guys. Two fast guys who can do this, where they can pot shot Israel Adesanya. And so I think this is going to be a much different matchup than the first one. Does that mean that Israel Adesanya is going to lose or Robert Whittaker is going to win? I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, Did
you hear about Adesanya and the rest of his team moving over to the United States?
I heard about this.
To avoid travel restrictions. I mean, that can only benefit them, right?
Yeah. And now Israel Adesanya, like, he can go to other gyms and by osmosis, like, get more stuff in, right? Whereas Robert Whittaker is kind of stuck on that island, right? Working good camp, great camp. Not saying it's not a good camp, but he's kind of stuck on that island, so to speak. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think there's a lot of things to suggest Israel Adesanya is gonna win, but for example, like, he's clearly shown the ability to counter Robert Whittaker off the blitz. He's shown that he sees, Robert Whittaker's timing coming if Robert Whittaker fights like the way he does.
And Whittaker was so fixated on the head in that last fight, though. Exactly. He was so fixated on hitting the head against somebody who, quite frankly, has shown an aptitude for making people miss and pay for it when they try to attack his head.
What I would say is that if Whittaker does fight a more well-rounded game, then sure, I think that this fight will look different from the first fight. But, looking at Whittaker versus Darren Till, for example, which if I'm not mistaken, there were, like, pretty much no grappling in that fight. It was a stand-up battle.
Was there grappling in the third round, I think?
A bit, but it was more like Whittaker was using the grappling to then set up some punches inside the clinch.
Yeah, I just don't see Whittaker having the advantage over it. And I agree with all your points, by the way. But I think Adesanya's striking is just a little bit too sophisticated. And you're right. I think, like, he is perfect at counterpunching. So even though Whittaker is good at blitzing, does have that weird karate style, does have pretty good movement as well, and his striking just in general is pretty, like, top notch. I just think unless he has a well-rounded game plan, which involves grappling with Adesanya, then it's going to be pretty much a repeat of the first fight. And what I would say is that Adesanya, even though he was taken down by Blachowicz, let's not forget, like that fight was also kind of even for some of the rounds, also, and against middleweights, like he's
It
pretty
was a
much.
stalemate for sure for large portions of it.
It
Yeah.
was a still, yeah, yeah.
And against
Like,
middleweights, like he's done a great job of defensive wrestling. You to the point where even if you take him down, he's going to get back up, and the next takedown is going to be much harder because he's going to know what your entry looks like, and he's
well,
going
even
to
still
set
too,
it.
like,
That's a fair point.
yeah.
I just want to quickly say that while I agree his takedown defense at middleweight is impeccable, and Jan Blachowicz is a fighter unique in his own right that his striking is incredibly awkward, and it was difficult clearly for Adesanya to get his timing. He also had a massive size advantage over somebody who doesn't really cut much weight to get to middleweight. I think that the threat of the takedowns in Whitaker is not so much of controlling Adesanya for an entire round, just giving him another possibility, so that Adesanya knows that if this grappling exchange could potentially eat up 30 seconds of the round, which would be in Whitaker's favor. And Whitaker's one of the few people that can, incorporate that into a wider striking threat. Whereas Marvin Vettori, for all his strengths, fairly basic on the feet, fairly basic, fairly predictable, and he was able to eat up large portions of the clock on Adesanya. He just wasn't able to get a lot of damage going on the feet or in the clinch exchanges. Whereas Whitaker, I see having more potential to do those.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just to make a case for Whitaker, not that I think that he's the clear winner or anything. I'm just saying that
I
if I
think
was to make a case for Whitaker,
more competitive. Yeah, I think it's going to be more competitive in this second fight. And with mental health being like kind of like the talk of the town. Well, I say it like that, but kind of being like a talking point. This past week, given like what's going on in the NBA.
What's going on in the NBA?
Oh,
Literally my question.
Oh, Ben Simmons and his mental health issues and struggles and people alleging that he's faking it or not faking it. But that's neither here or there. What I'm trying to say, I was just trying to use as a segue to this point, is that Robert Whitaker has come out and said that he was suffering mentally around that time. So, I'm not educated on how mental health works per se, but you'd have to believe that like a clear-headed Robert Whitaker would maybe come in with a better game plan, or we'll come in with a more rounded game plan coming into this fight as opposed to the fight a couple years back. Or at least I think, right?
I just think like even like looking back on that last fight, and we could definitely move on because the fight is not for a few months, but just the dynamic of the fight was Robert Whitaker was the champion, and there was a question as to whether Adesanya could beat him. A lot of people had Whitaker in that fight just based on his resume. Now it's a little bit different. Israel Adesanya, even though he has that loss to Jan, still has a little bit of mystique to him. And against every other middleweight that's come up, he has looked pretty much flawless. I could look at the Costa fight where Costa has the grappling to and the striking that some people thought would give Adesanya problems, and that was as much of a shutout as I've seen in a long time. So we'll see. I think like the dynamics a little bit different. Robert Whitaker still has something to prove, and hopefully, he puts a good account of himself. And to be fair to Robert Whitaker, he's looked amazing in his last like 3 fights. So I don't know, could be interesting.
So, yeah, with that being said, I know David's a mark for occupied Palestine Adesanya, but that one went over Mike's head a little bit.
No, I heard the story. I just didn't.
You heard what? Occupied Palestine Adesanya? We've got 2 more matchups to talk about. I know you guys are going to have to say a lot of these. One of these because it's a clash between David's 2 identities. Wow. I don't know who he's going to be rooting for. He might just have to surgically split himself in half and cheer for each of these welterweight competitors.
Wait, is it between a feminist and a scholar? Which one?
Feminist and so you're saying feminists can't be scholars then?
Wait, no.
Duly noted. No. I understand what you're saying. I understand completely.
Who's fighting? Who's fighting, big dog?
Dion Edwards. This is Kamaru Usman.
About damn time.
Yes.
David's sounding the victory bells, but he got what he wanted, and now he has the most difficult choice of his entire life. What do you do, David? What
I'm
do
gonna
you
go
do?
with Usman. I've been hearing a lot of talk about Usman being probably one of the greatest welterweights of all time, which I think is a fair assessment. I
David,
think
I'm not impressed by your assessment. Okay.
hilarious. Shouts out to GSP too, but I think this version of Usman would also give GSP some problems in my
Oh,
opinion.
100.
Oh yeah, I'm just assessing legacies. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. And I honestly think that, Leon Edwards is great at what he does. I think his striking is underrated. People keep calling him a boring fighter, but it's kind of like with, Michael's fight.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you know what's
No,
working,
I
like,
know it's fine.
why would you try and, like, liven it up by going into kind of a firefight with another guy? So, yeah, I think Usman's best. Well, what's interesting though, I was gonna say Usman's best strategy would probably be to go for his grappling because I think Leon Edwards has an underappreciated striking game. But what's interesting though is, being in Birmingham. Oh, am I boring you, Michael? Jeez,
No,
just
sorry.
powering the yawns. I'm kidding. Um,
Sorry.
no, do your thing. But what uh, here in Birmingham, the Renegade gym, or sorry, Team Renegade, which is the gym that
Leon
Leon
Edwards.
Edwards fights out of, is known for being a grappling gym, like primarily. Like they focus specifically on like wrestling and BJJ and grappling in general. So
But
I,
like, okay.
I know you're about to besmirch English grappling.
No,
I know,
I'm
but
not
I'm
gonna
I'm
gonna
just gonna
besmirch
say
manage
it.
myself.
like
I'm
these
not gonna
guys
besmirch it.
are grappling. Like Team Renegade is a grappling gym, like
No, I
predominantly.
understand that, but like what
Wait,
I'm
hold
saying
on.
is
Is,
there's
is
a
David
difference.
actually trying to say that people in England grapple?
Stefano, you
Look,
come out to Birmingham.
I'm not denying that Team Renegade doesn't really make a commitment to their grappling, and like we've seen Leon Edwards get better with his takedown defense. But you have to keep in mind when he faced Kamaru Usman the first time, he actually got exposed a little bit as a bad
It's a Brit.
grappler, right? So
Yeah. Exposed as a Brit. Didn't know how to grapple.
But the other thing too is like there's a difference between like I hate to say it like this, but there's a difference between grappling in Britain and American grappling, D1, D2 level grappling. You know, Kamaru Usman. Say what you will about that Colby takedown, but Kamaru Usman is a fantastic guy in terms of his defensive and offensive wrestling. In other words, while there's no escape for you from his striking, like let's say Leon Edwards gets stunned a little bit, which he has shown that he can get stung by a lesser striker. There's also no escape for him to get taken down
Okay,
and
but
to
counter to that though.
go to a takedown.
A counter to that
I
though.
just want to say that Britain's idea of grappling is, all right, enough. Down yourself a pint of warm ale and then go for the rugby tackle, right?
That is funny. That's so funny. Anyway, that is hilarious. No, I know for sure Team Renegade is a grappling gym. And they actually have some pretty decent guys there. But also, you could say that Leon has been stung by a lesser fighter, which is Nate Diaz, by the way. I mean, to be fair, Nate Diaz
No,
is an
what's it
awkward
called?
fighter.
RDA
But
got
also,
him a little bit.
can you also concede that Leon has better striking than Colby Covington?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
What?
You just hate British
They're
people.
they're
Stefano, I
very
get it.
different. They're very different
What was
approaches
it?
to the game. They're very different. Colby Covington's approach to striking is a volume-based approach, right? And it's one that sets up takedowns effectively. I think that if we're talking which is a more effective style to beat Kamaru Usman, I think Colby's is, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I think the
I agree.
low outputs, low volume style of Leon Edwards doesn't bode well in this fight. I think they're both southpaws, which is interesting. But I think the fact that Leon Edwards kind of uses the clinch as a bit of a safe haven doesn't bode well in this fight necessarily because he doesn't have the
That's my
wrestling
thing.
credentials. And I like his use of the clinch and how he uses it to damage. I like how he uses the clinch to secure it simply so that he can land strikes on the break, which I think is an awesome concept, right? The clinch isn't for him a goal in and of itself, but something so that he can attain so that he can hit you when he breaks the clinch. Very cool. His control of distance is interesting, but I think all of this necessarily amounts to deficits in certain ranges.
I think what really separates Leon from Colby is his use of movement. I think he is a much better mover. So that doesn't make any sense.
I agree. He uses footwork better.
Yeah, his footwork is much better. His control of distance is much better. And I think that could actually pose problems for someone who, like Kamaru, who isn't, it's the brute force like striker for the most part. He's kind of technical.
Say that about Kamaru Usman. While Kamaru Usman.
But you said Kamaru's a brute force striker? Is that how you described him?
For sure.
I wouldn't say
David, brute force, really? A brute force striker. Are we talking about Chris Lehman?
Savage force. Savage.
Are we talking about Dan Henderson? I don't get it.
No.
Look,
no.
I get what you're saying because it's easy to fall into the trap of a guy who's applauding kind of striker and go, well, he's more of a bruiser, and it's like not
really scientific though.
Yeah, I think Kamaru Usman uses the jab really well. He can use it at both stances. Good head movement, intelligent, deliberate footwork. Not the greatest mover, I guess, not the greatest guy with his footwork, but he's deliberate, right, where he goes, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's actually underrated at trapping the hands. People forget how he knocked out Jorge Masvidal is by trapping the hand with the right hook, and then with the left hook and coming over the top with the right hand.
Yeah, good hand trapping, good timing, right? He's not. It's interesting because his style is almost comically different from Justin Gaethje's, right? Mm-hmm. Kamaru kind of like a plotting stance switcher, plays the jab out of both stances. Does phenomenal work hitting the body. Gaethje does all of those stuff as well, but somebody who's really looking to pursue angles, get dominant angles on you, and then just batter you and engage in a war of attrition with you. Kamaru, not necessarily looking to do that, but I think there's one more matchup we got to discuss, and it is in the deepest division.
Hold on. Can I just say though, well deserved for Leon, regardless of whether we think he's going to win, get dominated, whatever. Well deserved. It's about time a guy with a long win streak who may not have the biggest name gets a title shot for real. So yeah.
I don't know, not off of that Nate Diaz performance, but anyways.
Just say you hate Britain. Just say you hate Brits.
Do you not?
I
mean, I'm not going to say that.
He lives there. Come on, bro.
So you're saying that you appreciate and like the colonial legacy of Britain. I got it.
Whoa.
Moving on.
Whoa, you didn't have to go there. Come on, bro. Come on.
Moving on. We've got a lightweight matchup that I think is just succulent. And it's Islam Makhachev versus Benny Dariush.
Talking about this. I was actually kind of scared that we weren't going to talk about this.
It's a banger. It's a banger. I think that Dariush is a pressure fighter. He's somebody that's going to bring the fight to Makhachev. He's incredibly reckless. Reckless to a fault, I think, but in a way that he forces you into a firefight. He's not somebody who has the greatest chin in the world, which has done him a disservice in the past, but who knows? We might see a great grappling match by virtue of him getting in the face of Makhachev and, forcing Makhachev into panic takedowns. And then there we go. We get to see how good Dariush's bottom game is and how good Makhachev is against a very offensive grappler. I'm excited.
I like Dariush, but I think Makhachev wins this one, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, I think Makhachev wins this one. I just, while I respect Dariush's accolades on the ground, I just think Makhachev is just too good at grappling and will not fall into any of the traps that Dariush set. And I actually think on the feet, it's kind of even with maybe even edging towards Makhachev a little bit.
I'd edge Makhachev on the feet. Although I would say that Dariush's style poses a lot of problems for people. He throws an awkward overhand left from southpaw.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Kicks to the body well.
Yeah.
He throws himself off balance with half of his strikes, but he's just like forehead to forehead with you, making for an exciting fight. almost every time. But scientifically on the feet, I'd probably give the edge to Makhachev. Although we've never really seen somebody deliberately try to get into Makhachev's face like that, which would be interesting.
I
I
think
think that's the thing, right? Like we don't know how Makachev deals with when he's the one who's being pressured back. And if there's one thing Beneil Dariush will do is he will bring pressure. So
You never know. Go on, one.
I was gonna say, I think, do we think that this is not a title eliminator? Well, yeah, pretty much a title
yeah,
eliminator.
no, it's a
I'd say
title
that.
eliminator.
Loses.
Yeah.
Two contenders that I think have flown kind of under the radar for whatever reason. I think it's absolutely a title eliminator for sure.
5-fight win streak versus 7-fight win streak. Let's do it.
Here's the thing, though. We don't know what's going to happen. I have so many question marks over this fight. Just because, think back to the Paulo Costa-Vittori fight, right? We were all sure that Costa was going to come forward and pressure and get in Vittori's face. And then he spends 3/4 of the fight circling the cage, right?
Yeah.
And fighting like he's Sam Alvey. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense. So how...
Shout out to our boy Sam.
Exactly. So how Dariush is going to try to remedy the grappling credentials, the takedown ability of Makhachev is the big question mark, right? Is he going to try and fight his fight? Is he what is he going to do? What is he going to do? I'm excited for this. Lightweight's the best. Let's do it. So with that being said, there's other matchups we could discuss, or
I wanted to quickly talk about one. Covington seems to be throwing down the gauntlet to our boy Khamzat Chimaev. Which, by the way, did you guys watch?
Wait, who's throwing down the gauntlet to Khamzat Chimaev?
Covington, Colby Covington.
He's also called out Masvidal, so I think it's just him kind of throwing out names. But
Yes.
I would love to see what Khamzat Chimaev could do against Colby Covington, because that's another good grappler and a willing grappler at that. Right. What's weird about Covington though is that he's not your big bruising grappler. He's more of a finesse game grappler. So
he's not a big guy, right? He is a controlling grappler who does a lot of damage to people on that.
Yeah. So
Chimaev would definitely be. I feel like he would definitely classify as kind of like a bruising grappler. Although he's really
technical. What do you mean by bruising, David? He gives him bruises?
Physical. He definitely relies a lot on his physique. Did you guys watch Chimaev versus Jack Hermansson?
Oh, where he threw him around?
Yeah. And that's a guy in a heavier weight class too. So
he looked massive.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. I don't know. I really don't know what a Colby versus Chimaev fight would look like, because I really don't know. They're both great grapplers. But yeah, what I've seen from Chimaev is that I can't think of too many people who would out grapple him in the UFC right now, personally.
But here's the thing, I don't know. For all we know, he's just been facing guys who just don't have an answer. And the second he faces a Covington, an Usman, hell, even at lightweight, at middleweight, there's Brunson right there who, Hermansson's a great grappler, but he's more of a jiu-jitsu guy, submission grappler type, right? What happens when he meets a wrestler, right? I don't know. For all we know, he could turn into Habib and, put guys on their ass. And then, he could also be a flash in the pan. So.
Yeah, put me down as excited but agnostic as well. I want to see these matchups. I want to see them. But the data I've been given hasn't been overwhelming, in that it's been favorable, but there hasn't been a ton of it. So I'm excited. I'm not going to make any broad statements.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody out grappling him in the UFC. I'm pretty sure.
I get the hype though. This man's a dog. He took Li Jianliang to the ground and threw him around. And even that wrestling match against Jack Hermansson, it's hard not to get excited. I get the hype. I'm just saying.
Yeah, David's saying nobody could out grapple him. I'm pretty sure Betchko would ragdoll Khamzat Chimaev. Ragdoll.
Sure.
And if you don't agree, then you're not a true feminist.
I think he has great grappling. Whether that translates to him being a dominant fighter is, he's been dominant.
So you don't think Betchko would ragdoll him?
I do not think Betchko would.
Well, then you're not a true feminist, David.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Anyway,
First, you can't be feminist and a scholar, and now this. But that's an interesting matchup. There's other matchups I'd like to see. Chimaev yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Let's see. What else are we getting into? Frank Mir fought Pulev on the weekend in a boxing match, and
oh boy.
Yeah, man. Why is Frank Mir still fighting? He wasn't a good striker even in MMA. His chin has been shot for
well fair,
over a decade.
He was coming off a win, if I'm not mistaken, in another Triller card. I can't remember who he fought, but
didn't he lose that card? That fight against somebody who was like 40 pounds lighter than him?
Did he?
Oh wait,
one of you guys are gonna have to do some research on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I have no clue. But
he looked okay. His boxing looked okay in his last fight. The fight that I watched, I think it was the one where.
What do you guys think about this whole what do you call it? The triangle, like in a vacuum, not like Triller sideshow event, but like this idea of a triangle ring, and to even a playing field between boxers and
a triangle ring.
Yeah, because that's what they did. They essentially did a triangle ring, and MMA fighter, and you can do. It's gonna be like, what was it, 7-ounce gloves. And then MMA fighters to even the playing field with boxers, they can do spinning back fists, super jumping punches, and extended time in the clinch.
Can you kick them? Like, how does this even the playing field? All that shit is still in the boxer's range. I don't understand.
No, I was asking. Like, I'm just asking in a vacuum. Like, I
think it's a gimmick, and I think a boxer still beats most MMA fighters in a boxing match. And
yeah, it sounds a bit gimmicky to me as well.
Fair.
I don't know, man. These crossover fights, like, they're not interesting to me. They're boring. We're seeing very, very washed up individuals towards the end of their career. No disrespect. Frank Mir did great things in his day, but he was never a striker. Never a great striker. I mean, yeah, this thing's not experimental. It's not exciting. It's kind of just like,
It's sad.
It's a couple of things. First of all, Pulev is like a legitimate boxer. Like, I can't believe this fight was like actually commissioned. And whoever signed off on it should really be ashamed.
Let me guess, it was in Florida?
I don't even know where it was, but bad. You know what? Let's look it up. But additionally, just wanted to give. Have you guys seen the knockout? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a standing knockout, and Dan Murgliata did not do a great job.
That's literally what I was going to ask.
Which is sad, because I like that.
Give Stefano another opportunity to say some words about Big Dan.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've always been very favorable towards Big Dan. This was a shocking departure from his normal code of conduct. Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, he goofed it.
We're relying on other fighters to stop fights before referees do at this point,
For Pulev was like, yeah, it's over.
Yeah, literally, it was over before he landed that straight right end hook. Like, and he knew it was over. But for some reason, it kept going on. Yeah, I guess some people are just used to wanting to see somebody hit the floor for them to call it knockdown. Yeah.
Yeah. As a person who's met Big Dan, shook his hand, it's weird. It's this weird jarring thing of like now also like giving him a rough time about that. But yeah, no, he goofed that up.
Mike, he's a nice guy. I met him too. But
yeah, he fucked up.
I don't know if we should share our story on air, but the calf slicer story, it's okay.
Yeah.
We'll save that for off air.
Yeah.
Okay, and then just before we get off, I wanted to also talk about Terrence Crawford beating Sean Porter. For some reason I was thinking Keith Thurman, but no, it's Sean Porter.
Wait,
I think
Terrence Crawford beat Uma Thurman? What are you talking about?
No, not Uma Thurman. That would be a hell of a story. Anyway, but yeah, he beat.
You'd like to see Uma Thurman get beat up by a professional boxer?
Would you pay money to see that? I mean, do you watch Kill Bill, right?
Yeah, well, I don't want to see Uma Thurman get beat up by a professional boxer. You know what I would pay to see?
What?
Michael Asiffo in a ring taking on possibly his greatest adversary yet.
Oh, God.
You know what I'm talking about? Huh?
Weight cut?
Weight cutting? Well, after he beats the weight cut, he beats Lennox Lewis.
You don't want to see that. We
only
like
in a
Michael. Let's not
triangle
do
ring. Only in a triangle
Weight
ring.
cutting's Mike's best friend.
that.
Lennox Lewis is his worst enemy.
Hilarious. No, but
So go on.
Terrence Crawford beat Keith. See, I've done it again. Beat Sean Porter. I think it was a round 10 knockout.
Yeah.
Michael, did you have a chance to watch the fight?
Yeah, I watched. I can't remember much of it, but Terrence Crawford basically first round comes out orthodox, and then comes out southpaw for the rest of the fight.
Yep.
And was looking for that uppercut, that rear uppercut or rear hook as Porter would throw himself onto Crawford, and in the 10th round he finally got there. I actually thought by 4th round on it was kind of over, like, or at least like
Interesting.
Yeah, because like the way what Crawford was doing, he was getting his timing better every round, and it wasn't like Porter was basically Porter's never been like there's this kind of misconception of what Porter is. He's never been this like, what's the word I'm looking for? Murderous puncher. What he is a guy who like will grind you down over the course of 12 rounds, right? And has a very brutal style, but it's not like he's got this like ridiculous punching power to watch out for, right? So like I was not really worried for Crawford in that sense, and he was timing and catching Porter with the harder, more accurate shots. So yeah,
I don't know. You see, I had a very different take on that. I listened to Teddy Atlas' views on this, and he was very critical of Sean Porter, which just made no sense to me because I thought, like, for those early, as you said, 4 rounds, I had the fight going to Sean Porter.
me too.
Pretty comfortably, actually. I thought he was catching Terrence Crawford a lot, regardless of the stance switch. I do think, like, yeah, I mean, they say Terrence Crawford is, like, the best stance switcher in boxing, but I thought like he was giving him problems with like the double jab. He was giving him problems with his activity. I thought like his rights were working. He was kind of dictating where the fight was happening. But I guess maybe that was, as you said, Terrence Crawford kind of just figuring out his like where he could land his shot. In terms of power, I thought Porter had a little bit more power than Crawford,
To be
personally.
honest, I don't see it. Like this is again like with Porter, like he it's not like he doesn't have decent power. Like he definitely crack, but he's not, because of the style he employs and the fact that he does get guys into deep water. Everyone kind of has this idea that like he's knocking people out based off of like power. That's not what it is. It's basically war of attrition. He's basically beating you in a war of attrition. And if he's not able to do that, the clock runs slow. And so, I kind of from 4th round on kind of saw the writing on the wall.
I get what you mean.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I get what you mean. I think
Yeah.
like especially for me, the real like rounds where it was clear Terrence Crawford was going to win was like 8, 9, and then 10.
Mhm.
I think by then Porter was leaning a lot on his entries. I felt like he slowed down a little bit, and as you said, Terrence Crawford was timing him much better by the time by those rounds. So
Yeah.
by the time he got knocked down in the 10th, I thought like it sucks, but like it was kind of inevitable at a certain point. What
And
did you
Porter
think
has
about?
one of the best chins in boxing history. So for him to be knocked down twice at that point,
Yeah,
I'm okay with the towel stoppage. What
okay,
I'm not okay with, is his dad
dad,
putting him on blast post
hilarious.
fight. This is what I'm talking about. See, this is not the same thing, but I want to draw parallels here. When we had the argument about Dan Hardy, a couple months back,
Yeah.
and it was about the idea of professionalism and how do you carry yourself, right? This is what I'm talking about.
Well, I agree 100%. It would suck for any coach to come out and sometimes we like watching people call out people, but for any coach to call out their fighter, let alone a dad calling out their son, calling him lazy, saying he didn't train for the fight, thought that was a little bit below the belt, especially after he just lost. And the reason he lost is not because he gave up or anything. It was because you threw
You
in the
threw the
towel.
towel. Yeah.
I thought that was
Which
weird.
I thought was fine.
I was perfectly okay with it. After the second knockdown, the writing was on the wall. Like, so
Throw
I
the
thought it was
towel.
a perfect call from Sean Porter's dad. But at the same time, Sean Porter has also just immediately retired. Like, I think it was like that same night. So I don't know. I feel like there's more to the story there. Like there must be
And
some
it's
kind
not
of
like Sean Porter was like horrible. Like it wasn't like seeing
he
Muhammad Ali
fought a
versus
good fight. I
yeah.
watched the Errol Spence fight versus Sean Porter, and I would say, like, well, first of all, I would say Sean Porter was better in this fight against Crawford, in my opinion, than in the Errol Spence
I
fight.
wouldn't say so. I wouldn't go there.
I would say like Spence kind of posted a shutout in that one. I would say he gave Crawford more trouble than he gave Spence, although Crawford dealt with it better than Spence did, if that makes any sense.
Right. I think Spence. I think the reason. Okay, look. I think the reason why I wouldn't go there is because what Porter tries to do is try to goat you into firefights, and Spence fell for a hook, line, and sinker, whereas Crawford was a little better at being more intelligent. And I think part of it is because he can go to the like. Spence is a natural southpaw and will stay in southpaw, whereas Crawford can switch, so you don't know what's going to happen, right? And so it's hard for Porter to be prepared. But yeah, essentially, I don't know. I don't think Porter fought a bad fight here. I did think he looked a little off from prime Porter. With that being said, I don't know if I like the idea of like throwing your son under the bus after he just retired and lost in like I think maybe his first knockout loss ever.
Yeah,
So
that's his first knockout ever.
yeah,
Um,
so
I think like
I didn't appreciate that.
to tie a bow on this, do you think we're ever gonna get Crawford versus Spence?
No. What?
All right, okay, cool. Well, that was a leg kick. Stefano, do you want to threaten
So,
some children?
Dan Hardy
Oh,
was
sorry, Stefano, were we boring you? This guy,
no,
head
yes.
down, like looking
Dan
at his
Hardy
phone,
still is
checking his
indicated
messages.
incorrect for what he did. Mike is incorrect. We are the leg kick. What a slow week.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a Risen event in a cage. So there's that.
Yeah. Who cares?
Excuse me. If you talk shit about Risen, then I'm going to talk shit about one. Okay. I love how David kind of plays himself as this or one FC correspondent and then probably gave up on it once he realized how bad they were.
I still watch one.
I love
I like
it.
one.
It is a little campy, but the production value is fantastic. Like,
And I just don't watch one FC's MMA. I think I've learned my lesson. Their MMA is several tiers below, even like Bellator. But they're like, their Muay Thai, their kickboxing events are really good. Your boy Giorgio Petrosian got absolutely smoked a couple weeks ago.
oh yeah.
Sorry, David, I don't speak French. Let's not
He's
talk.
Italian.
Let's not talk about that. Let's that didn't happen. Anyways, let's move on.
I don't want to talk shit because.
Anyways, guys, we are the Leg Kick Podcast. Subscribe, tune in, like the show, tell your friends about it. But most of all, above anything else, okay, we're not here to take part in this podcast game, all right? We're here to take over. All right, let that be clear. The Asiffo boys are here to take over. Yeah, good night, guys.
Michael, to play us out.
What does that mean?
Fuck it, we'll do it live. All right, in this crazy mixed up world where I'll never live down a cringy post-fight speech.
I think he also claimed that it was kind of like when in My Hero Academia, Goku acquired the Byakugan.
Yeah, okay. All right. Good night, everyone. I'm not even going to finish.
Goku was able to save the Fire Nation. I think he said something about that as well.
That good night. Good night.
You did.